Hello, and welcome to Law Talk. My name is John Celebrezze, and I'm the co-founder of the Celebrezze-Zange Community Legal Education Project, as we call it, CZ-CLEP for short. Our organization provides continuing education about the judiciary and legislature to attorneys, judges, government officials, and the general public. As a career educator, I recognize early on how important legal matters are and how they impact our lives. I am the nephew of the late Anthony J. Celebrezze, who was the popular 5-term mayor of Cleveland and a member of President Kennedy's cabinets. As a tribute to his lifetime commitment to the legal process, we dedicate this show.
John's special guest today is Leanne Haswell, currently assigned to Medina County Common Pleas Court, room number 2, and she took her training at the Academy of Court Reporting. Over her career, she has worked in private and public sectors. After 15 years with the Associated Court Reporters, she took a few years off to raise her sons and returned to Merit and Low court reporting before taking her current position at the Medina County Courthouse. Leanne now records felony criminal trials and significant civil cases, usually in excess of $25,000.
Leanne, welcome to Law Talk.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me.
You know, we've had a lot of folks sit in this chair on Law Talk episodes in the past, one of them being your boss, who is?
Judge Kimbler,
Okay.
the best boss in the world.
All right. I'll bet you say that about all your
No,
bosses.
I don't. Truly,
Okay.
I don't. He's wonderful to work for.
Well, the judge has been very instrumental and very helpful in many of the projects that we've done with Celebrezze-Zange Community Legal Education Project, and we really appreciate him as well. You know, Leanne, we talk, the judge has been here, Judge Collier has been here, almost all our judges, our local judges, and some appellant judges. And we've had a myriad of people, but the reason that I think your show is going to be very special today, you represent a part of our court system, a little bit like the unsung hero, because you can't take center stage, but you're doing something that the system won't work without. You are a court reporter, right?
Right.
Okay. And that means, I think, that every word that is said in a judicial proceeding, somehow or another, with that nifty machine, which you're going to tell us about in a little bit,
I am.
you take every word.
Every word.
And you've been doing this for a total of?
I've been doing it for 22 years, although I've only been with Judge Kimbler 4 years.
Okay. So in 22 years, I'll bet you've heard a whole lot of stories in courtrooms, haven't you?
I've heard anything and everything you could imagine.
And interesting enough, you recorded them.
I do.
Line by line, word by word.
Correct.
Well, okay. So for the benefit of our viewers, when you go to court, there has to be a record because, and we've had appellant judges on the show, Judge Dickinson, Judge Belfast. Sometimes people aren't satisfied with the way it came out at one level, let's say the common pleas where you're at, and the record needs to go to the next level, the Court of Appeals 9th District here in our territory. And that's where you come in because you provide that transcript, right?
Correct.
And you told me one time you had a case that thing was 2,000 pages long?
Approximately, give or take a few pages. It was a murder trial.
Wow.
That went, about maybe a week and a half.
And it was 2,000 pages.
And it was about 2,000 pages.
In that particular case, because I remember it was several years ago,
right.
That did go up on appeal, didn't it?
Yes.
So you had to provide that huge transcript.
I did.
Wow. That kept you busy for a while, didn't it?
More than I wanted to be.
Okay, well, all right, I think a good place to start we've now introduced everybody that there are other important people in the courtroom that are doing things while the lawyers are doing their thing and the judge is doing his thing, and there's Leanne taking this all down. But in your own terms, and you know, you've done this for many, many years, how would you describe a court reporter? What is a court reporter?
A court reporter's job is to, like you said, take every word down, and we do take every word down. A lot of people think that we're skipping over words, but we do take every word down, and it's basically we're a tape recorder.
Okay.
And we take what the attorneys say, what the prosecutor says, what the judge says, what the witness says, and not only that, but when you have cases where you have several attorneys speaking at once, not only do you have to put what they're saying, but you also have to be able to identify who's saying what.
Wow. Okay, so I was in, as a matter of fact, I was in court yesterday. I saw you. You were kind of in the back yesterday, but I saw you back there working away. And I think the reason you were, because there were multiple attorneys walking around, all kinds of exhibits being put up. It's a pretty big trial. So you have to sort all those out.
Right.
Now, sometimes when they call for what they call a sidebar, I see you actually pick that thing up and go. Sometimes you sit right next to the judge.
I do sit next to the judge.
So basically, I take it what the attorneys are conversing with the judge about, some point of law, evidence, whatever. You're taking that all down?
I'm taking, what I do is I do get on the bench with the judge because I'm short and I need to hear what everybody is saying. And sidebars are, we only have sidebars when there's a jury because it's, like you said, law that they don't want the jury to hear. And so when there's a sidebar, I go up there, I move.
You carry it with you?
I carry my machine with me and I get up on the bench and they discuss whatever it is they discuss, and then the judge will make a ruling and he'll either allow what they want to discuss in front of the jury or...
I imagine that's the stuff, Leanne, that when things do come up on appeal, that the appellant judges are looking pretty closely at because there's a point of law in there somewhere. Okay.
Right.
All right. Sometimes we hear the term stenographer. Is that the same thing?
Yeah, a stenographer and a court reporter, it's synonymous. It's the same thing.
Okay. All right. Well, but it's, you know, sometimes in our law office we're having a deposition and we have to have a record made. We call a local stenographer, a company, and they send somebody. You did that too, right?
Right. I did that for about 15 years, and then I took some time off to raise my kids. Yeah. And then I went back for a few years, and then I was fortunate enough to get my job, my current position with Judge Kimbler.
Okay. Well, we're glad you did.
So am I.
So, okay, so all total, I think we've covered it, but I did mark it down because I thought it was kind of important for our viewers to know. Looks like, not that you don't look much younger, but 22 years.
22 years.
You started when you were about 12, huh?
Thanks.
Okay. All right, on the subject of when you started, though, I mean, I think for all of our viewers, and especially those that are looking for career ideas, I mean, I imagine lawyer and judge always come to the forefront, but I know you work with two other fine ladies that I work with all the time. Your bailiff, Mrs. Barnes, and your secretary, Linda, and then Mrs. Porgio, the magistrate, and also Courtney Bailey, who's an attorney. Right. So there's lots of people behind the scenes in this court.
Lots.
Okay, and it doesn't work unless all of yous are team effort.
Exactly.
Okay. So if somebody was interested in, you know, being a court reporter, a stenographer, what kind of training do they have to have?
There's a few colleges, I believe Cuyahoga Community College. I went to what's the Academy of Court Reporting, and they train court reporters, paralegals. When I went, and that's been a long time ago, I'm not sure now, but when I went, it was basically when you could reach 225 words a minute, you were done with school. Although I had an associate's degree because there were classes you took that you were credited for. And it's just you went at your own pace.
I see.
If determined,
pretty interesting,
how fast.
That's truly proficiency education.
Right.
I mean, you have to meet that speed before you could.
And it was dependent on how fast you wanted to get out of there. I was out of high school for quite a while when I went to court reporting school, so I wanted to get done.
Sure.
So I practiced, and that's the key, is practicing.
So where you went to school, but I mean, you paid tuition, you admit it yourself.
Right.
But you sort of graduated when you reached a proficiency level.
Your first class, I think it was 60 words a minute, then it was 80, 100. And when you passed that test, it was a 5-minute test, and the instructor would speak at whatever speed you were aiming for. And then once you reached that speed, you were done.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. That's truly...
And to get out, it was 225 words a minute, which most people don't speak that fast, although I've ran into a few that probably speak faster than that.
For any prospective viewers that we have that might be interested in being a court reporter, it starts with an education. You know, they have to do some research, find out where they can go, and they have to build a proficiency.
Right.
Okay. Okay. After a trial concludes, Leanne, I mean, I think it's a fair question. You know, what happens to the records? In other words, not everything has to be transcribed at the end, is it?
No, no.
Somebody comes back 2 years later, says, "Hey, Leanne, I want you to transcribe that proceeding from whatever the guy's reason is." You know, all right. So, is that little narrow paper that's on your machine?
Well, I do have paper that records my strokes, but I also have an SD card.
Wow.
And every stroke that I do on my writer goes to this card.
I see.
And then I put this card in my computer, and I have a special program for this machine, and it defines all of my strokes. You build a dictionary.
I see.
On the way you write certain words.
So if I came to you at some point in time and said, "Leanne, remember that change of plea that we did back whenever," you'd say, "Yeah, it's in my computer."
Right.
You had listed it by the case number, I suppose.
Right. I keep these forever. I also back what I take off of this onto my laptop.
Okay.
Then I back that up on a disk, and then I always have my paper also.
Okay.
So, and you're required by law to keep these records 7 years.
I see, 7 years. How does it get to be words?
Well, that's where your dictionary comes in, because, for instance, every time I hit a certain key, I have it already defined as state your name.
Oh, all right.
So every time this machine senses my stroke, it comes up, state your name.
Okay.
But then you also have, court reporter, we go by phonetics. We go by sound. Our machine only has 24 keys on it.
Okay.
But with both of our hands, we can not only do every letter of the alphabet, we can do actual words. I can do pretty much the whole alphabet with one hand.
Ah. This is almost like you learned another language.
It is, in a way. It is. That's a good way to put it. You go by sound. We do a lot of what's called briefing. So it's putting a lot of words together, but it's only one stroke.
Yeah.
Like, state your name for the record is one stroke to me.
So, because of the world we live in, computers, I imagine your profession has evolved like all of ours through the years, where there must have been some stenographers a long time ago that had to actually type every word. Is that how that works?
That's pretty much from what I gather. You know,
Okay.
I'm just going by the way I learned.
Yeah, sure.
And
Well, okay, so it recorded all your strokes, and all your strokes are in a dictionary. So if you hit, I'll just call it stroke 1, it said state your name.
Right.
Okay, so I tell you, Leanne, I'd like for you to reproduce that thing. So will the computer actually do that, where eventually you'll be able to look on a screen, it'll be there? Do you have to do something?
Well, you do sit in what's called editing. For instance, right now we're in a medical malpractice trial. There's a lot of medical words that I've never even heard of, so therefore it's not on my dictionary.
Okay.
But the way I hear it, I stroke it, and then I'm able to define that first stroke as, catheterization.
Yeah, right, there you go.
Okay. So then from that point, every time it sees my stroke of how I've done catheterization, it will automatically come up in English.
All right.
So the key is to be very proficient as far as being consistent of how you write, which that's what we call it when you're on your machine, it's writing.
So you listened to the word catheterization and you told your machine phonetically what it's saying. Okay, but let's just say, another person, I don't know, you you won the lottery and you chose not to do this anymore. We don't want you to do that, but
Right.
you did, okay?
Okay.
Okay, can somebody else interpret that? Or it sounds like it's sort of personalized.
It is in a way. For instance, Judge Kimbler's court reporter, who worked for him for many years, who I replaced, I would never be able to do his work because he learned a different theory.
Sure, sure.
I would hope to think that somebody, if something happened, would be able to come in and do my job because I'm a good writer. That's what I would hope.
Okay.
But you do. Everybody learns a different theory. They're teaching court reporters now a different theory. And that's, so with my dictionary, you know, after so many years, your dictionary is huge.
Yeah, imagine.
It's huge, except for those words that you don't hear often, proper names of people, like I said, medical terms.
Yeah. In some courts that I've been in, Leanne, for example, the municipal court here, we've had Judge McIlvain on the show and Judge Chase. There's no stenographer in there, but I think there's a tape recorder running.
Right.
So basically, it's just being picked up on the tape, but you don't have that element where you are separating Mr. Celebrezze's talking, Mr. Smith's talking,
Right.
whatever.
Right.
Okay, but can somebody get a transcript off of one of those things?
They can probably get one. It may not be real accurate. When I was a freelance court reporter, before I started working in the courts, we would have numerous attorneys call us. I was in court, I need this tape transcribed. And it's very difficult to do because when you have 4, 5, 6 attorneys, you don't know who's talking. You don't see when people nod and answer. And most attorneys will say, is that a yes or a no?
Right.
But you don't see that.
So it really
door
can't-
slamming will muffle one word. So it's very difficult to do.
So, I mean, you're making a real good point here because, you know, in this age of efficiency, somebody could probably say, well, you know, we really don't need Leanne there in her machine. We'll just play the tape. But it won't work. I mean, you have to, you actually know another language is what's going on here.
Basically, that's, yes.
Okay. Wow, that's very interesting. All right, the second part of my question, I think you answered, you know, what are these records used for in post-trial? Actually, I answered my question, but it's appeal. I mean, primarily.
And not only for appeals, I believe last week, we had a defendant before the judge that was to be sentenced, and before the sentencing happened, the prosecutor and the attorney said, well, remember we discussed XYZ, and there was kind of a debate between as to exactly what was said.
I remember,
so then,
I was there actually,
Okay, so then that's when the judge says to me, Leanne, I need you to transcribe the defendant's
Okay, that's a good point. That
plea.
didn't have anything to do with an appeal. The judge just wanted a clarification there.
Right.
Because these two guys, I remember, they were arguing about some deal that was made.
Right.
Okay, and all right, so so it's not all, I mean, it's not complete transcripts always being done. It's stop, back up. Sometimes do you read to, like if I was in a trial or something and if I asked the judge permission, can you please have the recorder read back his answer? Do you do that?
Oh, yeah.
So in other words, you know what it is even right in the courtroom. You can interpret that.
Right, because a question's asked, an attorney objects, and they have, colloquy about if he can answer, and then it never fails the witness will always say, I forget the question.
Yeah, well,
a lot of times attorneys will say, I'll re-ask it. A lot of times they'll look at me and say, can you read the question back?
Okay, so when you do
then
that,
I'm able to, right there,
Okay.
I look on my screen and read the question back.
okay. Interesting, because, even as an attorney, I guess I sort of jumped to the conclusion, well, we got to have Leanne there because in case this goes up on appeal. But every day in your life, there's a reason to revisit it, even while it's going on.
Right, and even for the judge, when we're doing, for instance, a suppression hearing, a lot of times after the hearing, the judge will say, can you type up Officer so-and-so's, because there's maybe a question in his mind of what exactly was said.
Yeah, and he has to make a ruling at some point in time, so he wants you to...
He wants to look at it again, because when he's up on the bench, a lot of times...
I didn't want to interrupt you, but the point I was making earlier, and I think I'm just so pleased to have you on the show today, because people who follow the show, of course, are interested in the law and
Right.
not. But here is the legal team that goes on. I mean, the judge has to make there's two lawyers out there wanting the judge to rule one way or the other, and they happen to be the opposite.
Right.
Okay, and he said, I'm going to think about this for a while. He goes back in his chambers. He needs Leanne to pull out whatever he says because he wants to take a look at it. He may need Courtney Bailey to go look up a point of law.
Right.
Okay, and he may need Karen Barnes to, hey, you got to set this for another hearing.
Right.
Okay, so all of you are interacting, and I'm sure Linda's in there somewhere.
Linda's always in
Always,
there, yes.
yeah,
Linda,
whatever.
yeah.
Okay, so that's the team, and
Right.
and all of this is kind of behind the scenes, but it don't work without you.
Oh, right. Everybody's job there is so
Okay.
important that, like you said, people just, Karen.
Okay.
Karen's the one that schedules all of these hearings and has to deal with, I can't do it this day, and I mean,
Oh, I
yeah,
know,
it's more involved than people think.
Every defense lawyer in town knows Karen. I mean, but-
Right. Right.
Okay. Do you record your hearings when there's no jury present?
Oh, absolutely. Because most of our proceedings in court, besides a jury trial, there isn't a jury.
Suppression hearing?
Everything.
Okay, so in a suppression hearing, I think we've got the judge up on the bench. We've got a lawyer, prosecutor maybe a witness or two coming.
Right.
You got to put that all down.
Everything that goes on in our courtroom is, like I said, you can think of it as me as a tape recorder. It's
Okay.
being taken down, except for when the judge or an attorney will look at me and say, go off the record.
See, that was my question. You've come to it now. And my question was, which I think, do you record everything? You record everything unless a judge tells you not to.
Right.
And that's what's called off the record.
Right.
Okay, so on those few occasions when I see you idle, you're just not recording.
Right.
Because the judge instructed
Because
you not
for
to.
whatever reason,
Okay.
it may be just something totally unrelated to the case.
But you don't make that decision. I mean,
No, I don't make-
You are in record mode
until my judge tells me
Okay.
not
and
to
here
be.
again, close relationship between you and judge.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
And through working with the judge, you kind of know too, because my judge, I mean, he's a wonderful man. He's great, and a lot of times he may say something, and are you related to so and so?
Yeah.
And certain things you just know
Yeah,
not to
sure,
put on the
sure,
record.
Sure. Well, that's just by
Right.
working closely with anybody for a long
Right.
time.
Right.
Maybe before we leave that, I mean, a suppression hearing, so I clarify myself, is an arrest has been made, there's some evidence, the police have found some illicit drugs. Prosecutor said, yeah, there's our evidence, we're going to trial with that. Defense attorney says, I don't think so. I think there were extenuating circumstances.
Right.
Judge, we want you to suppress it, meaning that if the defense attorney wins, that comes out. That's a suppression hearing. You've probably sat through a million of them.
Right.
Okay, give me another example. I mean, just of where you would be in there recording, just for the record, excuse the pun, but.
A change of plea.
Oh, okay. Yeah, all right.
When somebody gets charged, they have an arraignment where they
Yeah.
enter their plea.
And they generally, the judge will look at, defense attorney says, Mr. Celebrezze, I assume you are waiving ta-da, and entering a plea of not guilty, and I say, yes, Your Honor.
Right.
Okay, that's where it normally stands. Now, sometimes my clients, and all of our clients, change their plea later on.
Right.
You got to be in there for that.
Right, and that's what's called a change of plea, and that's where, just like it says, they're changing their
Sure.
plea from not guilty to either guilty or no
Okay,
contest.
so in that type of, I've seen you do those plenty of times. Judges on the bench, you're kind of directly under them there.
Right.
Prosecutor's next to me, probably by himself, unless
Right.
he happened to have one of his assistants with him. No need for the police officer or anything there at that.
Right.
And me and my client.
Right.
And there it'd be.
And that's, Yeah, it's change of plea, sentencings, arraignments.
Okay, so one of the things I always kind of point out on the show is that people love to watch Law and Order, and it's a great show. I like to watch it too, but you don't. I guess there's just not the glamour or the whatever you want to call it as to what's really going on in a courtroom.
Right.
But there's a court, even in Law and Order, if it's about, it's fictional, but if there was a real court proceeding, one of your compatriots is in there taking this down.
Right.
And it's not always in front of the jury. I mean, it's in fact, juries don't happen every day. So, well, that's.
And even when there is a jury, again, to refer back to the trial that we're in right now, many times throughout this trial, the judge will say to Karen, the bailiff, take the jury to the jury room because there's issues that need to be discussed. So then that part's not in front of the jury, but then when time comes for my transcript, we have to put everything that, so when somebody's reading this transcript, they need to know exactly what's happened. So there will be what we call a parenthetical in there, where it'll say, thereupon the following further proceedings were then held out of the presence of the jury.
Yeah. Okay.
And then thereupon it was held back in front of the jury.
Sounds like one very
So the reader of that transcript knows the jury didn't hear this, they heard this was off the record, this was at sidebar.
No, and I would compliment you or anybody in, you're not an attorney, that's not your role, but you thoroughly understand the system. I mean, as to
a lot of it.
Well, you do. You wouldn't be able to function the way you do, obviously. Don't be modest. Okay, we don't have too much time left, but what is that machine called?
This machine is called a stenograph machine, and mine's called a stenograph because that's the manufacturer, just like a Ford or a Chevy.
I see.
And my model is a stenograph fusion.
I see.
And there's several different writers out there, and they're always...
Is this one that you, Leanne, selected because of your comfort level with it? I mean,
yes.
If you want to drive a Ford or a Chevy?
Right.
Okay. Is that actually your property or the property of the court?
This is my property.
That's yours?
This is mine.
So all those years or if you want to do freelance work or whatever, that machine goes with you wherever you're going?
Right.
Okay.
Depending on where you go, some freelance firms provide the reporter machine, but that is mine, and it's kind of like I said, buying a car. This was the model. I looked at different ones, and this was the one I liked. And
well, I know of 2,000 pages that you put that to very good use on.
Yes, I do.
Well, Leanne, I certainly thank you for being our guest on Law Talk today.
Thanks for having me.
As usual, the show went by pretty quickly. I'd like to offer the invitation for you to return again.
I'd love to.
Comments made by John's guest on Law Talk are solely those of his guest and do not necessarily reflect the views of Celebrezze Zangi Community Legal Education Project. To view this show and others, go to www.czclep.org. In the Wandsworth area, a complete listing of dates and times of this broadcast, tune in to WCTV Channel 15 or log on to wandsworthcity.com and follow the links to WCTV. At CZ we're devoted to the education of today's legal issues. Fueled by the public's keen interest in our legal system and current events, CZ is dedicated to the educational venues aimed at enhancing the understanding by all citizens, regardless of age, education, occupation, or wealth. A function of the Celebrezze Zangi Community Legal Education Project.